Hello and welcome back to part 2 of the two-part informational about Urbana-Champaign Books to Prisoners. Last week we sat down with volunteer supervisor Lolita DeMoss to answer some frequently asked questions that I've received in social media and in my blog. If you've missed that video, you can watch it here. It actually covers a lot of really good information, especially if you or someone you know is in an Illinois prison and would like to receive free books from this program. In this segment, we're going to be talking about how to get involved with the Books to Prisoners program here in Urbana-Champaign if you would like to become a volunteer. First, we will take a short tour through the workroom. Afterwards, Lolita will give us a rundown of what generally goes on at a volunteer session and what you can expect should you decide to become a volunteer. One last thing I want to mention before I hand it over to Lolita, and that is to check the description box below for more information.
Our workroom is rather small, so we can't have too many people in here, but this is actually our sorting part. So when we receive donations down here, our sorters will stack them on here so they can be more accessible. But this is where they start to sort the books and decide whether or not they go on the shelf, or they go in the sale box down below, or they go to our Amazon provider. And so this starts our library, and this is basically our nonfiction. It starts with ethnicity, so we have African American genre here, and then there's subtitles within there. This is our urban fiction, which is most popular, run among African Americans, and at this time we actually have quite a few. Generally, we only have one or two, but this is one of those genres where you could only get one of that particular book. And then with the African American section being not as big, then you can get another African American book. But you could only get two. We have this handy dandy sign to remind our volunteers. You can only send two books from the African American collection. So then you have Native American, Latin American, and then this alphabetical start with biography to the end of this bookcase. So this is our nonfiction. And then on this bookcase we have our astrology, mythology, religion. And then starting with this back bookcase and then wrapping all around is our fiction. And it's broken down into Christian, classic, contemporary, and mystery thriller. This is our poetry section here. So then again, you just kind of see that we have our sale boxes underneath. And again, that's if it's not able to go on the shelf, then it'll go in the sale boxes. But doing a volunteer session, if a volunteer finds a book in the sale box, they can use it. The inmate, the prisoner gets first choice on the book. So if they see something in the sale box, they can pull it out. And so this is where our popular Grisham. Like I said, wrapping all around here is the fiction. On this bookcase is our educational materials. So you have GED, and then we have our textbooks. And even though our textbooks are going to be our heavier weight, if we have the exact textbook that they want, then we could send it. So even though it's going to be more than 2.5 pounds, you can send a textbook, but that will be the only book that they can receive. Some more fiction. And there was actually a prisoner who actually wrote us, because when you talk about sci-fi fantasy, we kind of lump them together, but a prisoner wrote us and he told us this is what science fiction is about and this was fantasy about, and so that gave us a greater understanding to make sure we sent the right books. So that's an example of the feedback we definitely get. So it's like, I'm glad you sent me books, but let me just share. Sci-fi, not the same thing. And this is our dictionary section. So we have Spanish, English, which we purchased those books as well. But we have, in the past, Altrusa, which is a service organization, has donated Spanish English dictionaries, and actually has given us a donation to buy Spanish learning books. So that's pretty helpful, because in addition to giving a Spanish English dictionary, then we can give them a beginning book. And oftentimes it's because they want to communicate with their cellmate. These are our heavier dictionaries, like I mentioned earlier, that they may write us back and say, I'm in college English now and I want a bigger dictionary. So when they ask for a dictionary, we'll generally give them this pocket dictionary. And so just starting off, this may be, reasonable, but when you go up in educational level, that's when they want the bigger dictionary. During a volunteer session, I will provide the orientation, orientating volunteers to our loving workroom. And that would entail knowing where to find the books in terms of the categories, the genres, explaining to them what categories you can only give one book to, kind of share with them about dictionaries and the fact that dictionaries are the only book that we purchase, which, given that we're not-for-profit, it drains our budget, so we have to be really careful with that. So helping volunteers to understand, even if a prisoner wants a dictionary, we only send it to them if they're eligible. At this time, they can receive a dictionary every 5 years. At one point, they were only receiving a dictionary for the life of the program. So that's what they will be doing, filling an order, putting together a package. So what a volunteer would actually do is they would grab a letter here, and then on this letter it shows you whether or not they can receive a dictionary. So we're at reference, even if they say yes, unless they ask for it, we don't give it. And then Spanish-English dictionary, okay to send her back. And then parole date. And the reason why the parole date is important is because as we're packing, if there's an instance where we're getting close to their parole date, we don't want to ship it if they're not going to receive it. And so the volunteer would open up the letter, and they would read it and to decide, what to go look for. So the volunteer would put the book order together, then weigh it on our scale to make sure, that it was under 2.5 pounds. And then they would complete a packing sheet here. And then it asks for the name, number, facility. And then on the back page is where they'll get a chance to say if they've met the order or haven't met the order. And because of our weight restriction, we say if they've been able to, if the volunteer was able to give the prisoner one of what they want, then they've met the order. But if they had to make all substitutions, then they haven't met it. And then we have them do a correspondence, but it has to be general because we don't want to make it seem like we're a pen pal organization. So we actually have an example of what they can write so that we won't, look like we're in a pen pal kind of situation. And then you sign it, your first name, not your last. You can give credit to our organization, or you could be anonymous and say you're a volunteer. The envelope is on top. The package sheet is below that, and then the books, and then 2 rubber bands. The 2 rubber bands is because we touch the book so many different times. We don't want to lose the package. And we have the envelope on top because, again, as a volunteer-ran organization, there's often times where packers could be on vacation and packing can get backed up. So if we have the date shown, then we'll know who needs to have their order sent the soonest. And so if you want to come out and have a volunteer experience at Books to Prisoners, we're open Tuesdays 7 to 8:30, Thursdays 2 to 3:30, and then every second and third Saturday 2 to 3:30. We're at the Independent Media Center, which is 202 South Broadway in Urbana, and we're in the basement. So come join us.